Okay, I'm gonna pause that.
Yeah. I want to welcome to the Sarasota Memorial Hospital Board Forum for At-Large Seat 1. I'm Sean Bartelt, President of the Sarasota League of Women Voters of Sarasota County. Before we begin, I'd like to explain why we are conducting this forum with only one of two candidates for Seat 1. Through our error, the Sarasota League scheduled the Hospital Board Forum during the observance of the Jewish High Holy Days. To correct our error as best as we can in the short pre-election window, we offered a second recording option to Mr. Sprintz. Mr. Sprintz accepted our offer to record his forum prior to sundown so that he may observe the holiday. Mr. Sprintz's opponent for Seat 1, Ms. Sharon DePeters, will appear along with the other hospital board candidates at the 5:30 p.m. forum. Please note that the recording of this forum and the 5:30 forum can be viewed by visiting our website at lwvsrq.org. We have the links there, but also on our YouTube page. Now to begin. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. The views expressed are those of the candidates, not of the League, and this forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. The League does not support or oppose political candidates or parties. Please note that all registered voters in Sarasota County can vote for all 4 open seats on the hospital board. So let's get started. I want to introduce our moderator, Kathleen Galicia, who is a former League board officer and also doctor of physical therapy practicing in Sarasota for 41 years. Kitty, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Hospital Board General Election Candidate Forum, the 4 p.m. forum. I'm Kitty Galicia, tonight's moderator. The rules for this session will be: the candidate has 1.5 minutes to reply to a question and to make concluding remarks. As time permits, all questions asked of you will be asked of the Hospital Board 5:30 p.m. forum candidates. You are requested to answer the question that's asked. You may discuss your opponent's policy positions, but may not make personal remarks regarding other candidates. Our timer will ring a warning bell once the 20 seconds remains and twice when no time remains. You must stop talking when the bell rings twice and no time remains. Timer, please ring your bell once. Now ring your bell twice. Thank you. League guidelines prohibit any recording of this forum. The League will record the event, which can be streamed from our website and from YouTube. Our guidelines prohibit anyone from using any portion of this recording for any purpose. All candidates for both forums have agreed to these rules. I'd like to introduce our 4 o'clock candidate, Hospital Board at-large, Seat 1, Alan Sprintz, Democrat. Mr. Sprintz's opponent is Ms. DePeters, Republican. She will participate in the 5:30 Hospital Board Forum. The first question. Please introduce yourself, Mr. Sprintz. Describe your education and experience related to this position and explain why you are the best candidate for this position.
Thank you for going out of your way to bring me into the forum group. I have an MBA in hospital administration, and I spent 25 plus years as a hospital executive throughout the country, both in teaching hospitals and community hospitals. My experience has been in managing hospitals, in building hospitals, expanding the reach of hospitals to underserved areas. So the question of why I'm a good candidate or why I'm a candidate for the board, I felt that there were members of the board who were interested in, had political ideas or followed political ideas that I thought were counter to community hospitals. And I felt that my experience as a hospital administrator would give non-political.
Thank you. You may be able to follow up with that, this following
Okay.
question. Please tell us why you're running for the hospital board.
I'm running for the hospital board because I think that I have the experience and training both in running hospitals and in being in the community, and my experience in training with boards, working with boards, bringing boards to mutual consensus makes me an ideal candidate for the board.
Thank you. In 2024, SMH Community Hospital spotlighted initiatives including mental health care, an outpatient cancer center, and research institutes. If elected, what additional initiatives do you hope to advance?
I think Sarasota Memorial Hospital is faced with two issues in the county. The first issue is the exploding population, which will have demands on healthcare in the county. The hospital, as a community hospital, as a public hospital, has an obligation or has a mission to provide healthcare to the community. There is a lack of health insurance in the community. It's incumbent upon the hospital to provide healthcare that it should be innovating different formats for providing cost-effective healthcare in the community. I think that the hospital needs to continue its skill in managing the finances of the hospital to enable it to continue its operations, as well as planning for the future. So from my perspective, it has to innovate. It has to strategically plan for the future, and it has to dealing with the problems that are affecting the community.
Thank you. As stated in its job description, the hospital board has the responsibility to focus on advocacy on public policy issues. What will your advocacy priorities be in the coming year?
There are a lot of problems in the community, particularly when it comes to gun violence and lack of health insurance in the community. From my perspective, we only see we count the problems with gun violence that we can count. We see the trauma care, we see the death. What we don't see are the hidden costs that go along with it, whether it's buildings or schools or the effects on families. There's a hidden cost to gun violence. My advocacy would be approaching that as a community health problem. Secondly, I'm concerned about the lack of health insurance in the community, and that affects the people who show up in the emergency room without insurance. They crowd the emergency rooms because they are unable, they use the emergency room as a primary care physician, and they shouldn't do that. There should be other places that they receive their care. So my concern is,
Thank you. What is the role of the hospital board in reducing healthcare disparities among more disadvantaged local population groups?
the hospital needs to be an advocate for providing healthcare to the community. That takes several forms. It just can't be people who can afford care come to the hospital. The hospital has to look at the needs of the community, whether those needs are mental health needs, whether those needs are expansion of trauma care, whether those needs are expansion of primary care that's available to the population. There are lots of people in the community who can't afford care. The hospital has been terrific in providing care. As a community hospital, they do not turn people away. That has a cost. That is a cost to all of us. And I think we need to, as an institution, we need to expand the ability of people to get health care. For example, the expansion of Medicare. The expansion of Medicaid in the community. Our state is one of the few that has not done that. And it affects the people in the community, particularly particularly at the lower level.
As Sarasota's largest employer, is housing a problem for SMH staff? And if so, what is the role of the hospital board in addressing this issue?
I think the hospital needs to be an advocate for the expansion of housing. I'm not aware that it provides that staff does not have the ability to find housing in the community. That's a community problem, not just a hospital problem. And the community, the hospital needs the hospital can play a role in advocacy for affordable housing. I personally don't think it's up to the hospital to provide the affordable housing.
In your opinion, what policy changes are needed, if any, to ensure that Sarasota Memorial's medical staff is adequately supported to provide every woman with all necessary emergency pregnancy care in compliance with Florida law?
Look, this is a problem nationally, not just Florida, not just Sarasota. We have certain laws that need to be followed. The responsibility of the board is to provide care and safety of the hospital's liability. You must prevent liability. That requires bringing in physicians that are qualified for their positions. That requires the board to assure that the treatments provided in the hospital are proven. That means that the hospital needs to follow the laws of the community. It doesn't mean that the hospital can't be an advocate but the hospital needs to follow the laws.
Thank you. What is your position on the hospital's millage rate? Should it be reduced, increased, or stay the same? And on what basis would you make your decision?
I think the hospital is very prudent in the application of the millage rate. The millage rate, the hospital has the option to go to 2 mills. They're using 1 mill as a tax rate. Now, what is the effect of that tax of the tax monies coming in? Sarasota Memorial had $83 million in tax funds that came into the hospital. That $83 million of tax funds allow the hospital to continue providing the services and the demands for services that it does for the community. Earlier, you mentioned that the hospital was expanding healthcare needs, cancer needs. In last year's budget, they were planning $343 million in construction funds. They had $64 million in a plan for a cancer center, et cetera. That $83 million allows the hospital as an offset to provide the services. If they have to draw on their own uses, it means that $83 million would not be available.
Thank you. Would you please make any closing remarks at this time?
I think that the hospital is faced with 2 major problems: the lack of insurance and population growth. It has to innovate in care for the population growth to provide healthcare. And I think there are strategic needs in the development of effective and cost-effective healthcare. They need to continue their skills set in finance. And I think that I have the experience as a former hospital executive with lots of experience and lots of board experience to be a valuable contributor to the board of Sarasota Memorial. And I have no question about my abilities or the care that I can, my abilities or those things that I could provide to the board. And it's up to the voters.
Thanks to our candidate and to the Sarasota League volunteers. Voters, please vote by mail, early voting, or on election day at the polls. Your vote is your voice and it matters. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.